Principled Accountable Coalition for Edmonton. This is your PACE podcast. Subscribe today. All right. Thank you for joining us today for your PACE podcast. I'm Mark, your host, and I'm here with my friend Jason Bale. And Jason, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
So I'm Jason Bale. I was a candidate in the last election for Ward Garihio. It's Millwoods, Ellerslie kind of area, and yeah, happy to be here and talk municipal issues. And
yeah, I remember on the campaign trail, we campaigned in different areas, but we always enjoy talking about budgets and finance and the city's lack of understanding of that sometimes. So what have you been up to lately?
You know, I'm back at work and just kind of flying under the radar because I mean, you know, it's a lot of work on a campaign, and you know, I was one of the first candidates to start. I think I was actually the first to start on doors. So yeah, it's been nice to kind of rest and recuperate a little bit. And
yeah, you were door knocking for almost a year before the campaign.
Yep, I started early December.
Yeah, wow, that's and then just kind of goes to show what kind of a machine everyone was up against. But yeah, no, on the campaign, we love to talk about budgets and all that, and that kind of brings us into something I'm really passionate about. I think everyone who listens knows that I will talk your ear off about a budget if you give me the chance. But one thing that's been going around lately is the capital expenditure budget and asking for community feedback or consultation from Edmontonians. So I don't know if anyone's seen those Make Your Opinion Known on the 2027-2030 budget. But yeah, just a bit about what the capital expenditure budget is. It's one of the two budgets we have in the city. We have our operating budget, and we'll get into the operating budget later, but we have our capital expenditure budget. The capital expenditure budget is something that I like to rant and rave about constantly, but it's what it's the budget that talks about all the new things we can build, like all the new rec centers and all the new roads that are being built. And the important thing about it is we can take debt out on that. So they're asking our opinion for it, so I encourage everyone to make their opinion known. But what are your thoughts on the upcoming capital expenditure budget?
So I think you're right that it is very important for everyone to make their opinions known.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm interested in how they report that feedback, because sometimes they'll just say, these are the things that we've heard. And so if they hear 10 people say you're out of your mind, and they hear one person say, yep, I want to spend all the money, then they'll put those two opinions up without account of how many people actually shared that opinion. So yeah, I'm curious to see how it gets reported and see if it's more show and tell or genuine public consultations. So
yeah, the city has a bit of a history of being pretty poor with public consultation.
Yeah.
Like it interests me to see Andrew Knack's asking Edmontonians to make their opinions known on this budget, but at the same time, the history of actually listening to that public consultation has been lackluster. Examples that come to my mind are anything to do with infill, bicycle lanes, previous budgets. Yeah. Like there's the examples abound, and so my fear with this public consultation process is there will be a lot of apathy, and I feel we've developed a lot of apathy in general to our elected officials in this city, which I'm not encouraging. Please make your opinions known. I always encourage that, but that is where my concern comes from.
Yeah, so. And you know, absolutely legitimate concern. I mean, we've seen that over the years, and actually we've seen it this year. Earlier they were talking about infill, and lots of people took time out of their day to come down and talk about their concerns with the infill in their communities, and council, those people didn't feel like they were listened to. So there's a lot of, well, if they're not going to listen anyways, then what's the point? Throw their hands up, right? And
yeah.
So I get it, but like we cannot cross that line. We still have to keep going and making them listen.
Well, yeah, and it's
civilly.
Civilly,
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's really hard sometimes, though, for a lot of people to not feel apathetic, I find, because I remember before the election, well before, I think it was back in May, someone can correct me on the date, when there was a public hearing on infill. And City Hall was filled. It was packed. You could sign up to give your 5 minute spiel and say what your opinions were. And I remember sitting in City Hall and listening to overwhelmingly people did not want this. And here are people waiting hours upon hours in line for their chance for 5 minutes in front of council. There was, say, close to 200 people lined up, and no guarantee when you were in the queue. And it was you had to wait all day on a weekday, and there were people who took time off work for it. It was a complete zoo. Well, it wasn't. It was very orderly. But the thing I noticed was for every 10 people that were railing against it, kind of your example, there was maybe one who was like, yeah, the way we're doing it's okay. I think I can count on my one hand, actually, like, so even less than 1 in 10 amount of people who were praising it. And a lot of them, and there's a few of them that you could tell their special interest. They had very vested interest in making it, the infill, go the way it is. And that's not to say that people who were against it don't have interest in it, but people who are against infill tend to be people who want to keep their homes, save their neighborhoods. It's a little different. But in that case, city council still just went ahead.
Yeah, and I think the council looked at it as all or nothing when it comes to supporting the zoning bylaw, and so that was the approach that they took. They said, well, no, we need to pass the zoning bylaw, and we can't have 40 some zones or whatever it was, right? So they wanted to make it neater, and it all goes back to the city plan, and which is less of a plan, more of a color book. It's not very detailed. It's very broad. But anyways, so every time they heard opposition, they thought it was, I don't want any infill. That everyone's just NIMBY, and it's like, well, no, you didn't consult EPCOR about the drainage in the area. Like, what is all this extra density, all this extra plumbing going to have on our infrastructure? What is the loss of green space going to have on our storm sewers? What did you consult the police on crime prevention through environmental design, which is very real department of the police department. They didn't consult teachers, which schools have classroom space for new families to come in before we start stuff and family. Like, there's so much more engagement that they could have done, and they could have done the zoning bylaw properly. And they didn't. They consulted urban planners, select developers.
Yeah, and I think you raised a good point about it, is when they seem to think of a lot of issues when they are going to this public consultation, and infill's a perfect example of that, of you're either for it or against it. Mm-hmm. It's black or white. And it's like, when you're asking for public consultation on something as complicated as zoning, people take time to look at it and research it. And yes, there are some people who will go into City Hall and rant and rave about it's a black and white issue to them. Sure. There's a lot of nuance in zoning, like a lot. And people cared. Mm-hmm. But what I noticed when I was there was councillors tend to be like, okay, you're either for the plan we have or you're completely against it. And there's no middle ground. There's no actual consultation. So how is it that people or residents of Edmonton feel listened to or actually engaged in this process?
You know, honestly, I don't know what the answer is, other than making sure that your representative is there. I mean, that's one thing that was actually on my radar to do was, if you look at the Council Code of Conduct, and I think it's somewhere in the Municipal Government Act too, is that each councillor actually has to represent the whole city. Mm-hmm. But we can amend that procedures bylaw or the Code of Conduct bylaw to say, no, the mayor represents the whole city. Each councillor has to represent their ward on citywide issues, right? Because now it's, councillor in Ward A, what incentive or accountability mechanism do they have to actually represent the people that elected them over the rest of the city, right? Yeah. Like, it's with that logic, there's no mechanism against, everyone in my ward should pay double taxes because that is best for the rest of the city. What mechanism is there to stop that? It's in the interest of the rest of the city, but it's not in the interest of the people that you represent. So So that's one of the things that I don't like. That was one of the amendments that I was going to put forward quite early. And
yeah, that sounds like that would have been a pretty good amendment to put forward. But no, let's just bring it back a bit. We kind of bashing on the consultation process a little bit here and using infill as an example because it's really hard not to use that as a perfect example. But I do want to encourage people, again, please participate in the consultation process. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult because heck, I'm apathetic to it sometimes too. But if we don't, us not making our voices heard during these times is the current council will take that as affirmation that they're on the right track. And they're not. So we have to make our voices heard any way we can. So now the reason this current consultation's happening is for the capital expenditure budget that's coming. And now kind of segueing that as an example of something that can be in a capital expenditure budget is, I mentioned things like rec centers. And there's one rec center that's in the news recently.
Yep.
I don't know if anyone knows about the Lewis Farm Rec Center that's been under construction. I kind of ranted about it a few times on the campaign. But yeah, have you heard much about it recently?
I heard it's over budget. I think it was 43% is what I heard.
Yeah, they are. So just for those who don't know, that gives some context here. This rec center was admittedly supposed to be a nicer rec center, but the average rec center in Edmonton costs, if you account for inflation, over the last 20 years, an average rec center will be $125 million. That's not cheap. It's expensive. This one was set to be $316 million.
Now, I'm pretty sure actually that this rec center was approved at the same time as Meadows Rec Center and a few others, and they were all expected to be in that range of about $100 million each.
This one was expected to be over that always, but there was definitely ballooning in costs. Huge ballooning costs. So they are, to my understanding, they are already exceeding the budget. They're not releasing how much, which that's always a fun sign when they're not saying how much over budget they are. And it is 65% complete. So the thing was supposed to take 18 months, and it started construction in 2021. So they're behind schedule, they've blown the budget, and now they're not releasing how much more it's going to cost.
Yeah. Well, and not only that on the reporting too is that when they report how many projects are over budget and over schedule, they treat the rec center, this is one project. And a $10,000 alleyway is one project, so they get equal weighting. We're not weighting based on how much of our dollars are over schedule, how much of our dollars are over budget. Because I mean, if a $10,000 alleyway goes, 50% above its budget, that's considerably less than a rec center going 1% over its budget.
Yeah, and just to kind of dig deeper into that for the numbers, because I love numbers. I think everyone knows that. I was reading that during the last time I checked, which was the end of December sometime, that the city had confidently reported that about 90% of all projects were on time within budget. Okay, dig deeper into that numbers, and the example you just kind of gave, like filling in a pothole somewhere or asphalt, they are technically correct. But okay, filling in that pothole is being given the same weight as a massive rec center being way over budget. Like they're not. I would love to know what percentage of are the dollars.
Well, and not only that is they actually break down each capital project into 5 parts. So there's the design phase, and then there's the actual build phase, and then there's 3 more I can't think of off the top of my head. And each one of those is weighted as one project. So if the rec center, let's say it's only behind schedule and over budget on one of those 5 parts, it's only 0.2 of a project over budget and over schedule.
Yeah, that's I don't want to say that's cooking the books, but that's making the numbers look a little bit more kind than they really are.
Exactly, it's a disingenuous truth.
Oh, exactly. Like let's go back to the rec center that I'm liking to pick on. So there's 5 different phases to it. Like the design phase, it's pretty hard to be behind on the design phase. The bidding phase, all 4 of those 4 phases, can be totally fine, but then the actual construction phase, the part that matters,
Yep.
can be behind, but the way it's weighted into a behind project is not as much because the other 4
Yeah.
were on time.
Well, and on the another, just to add to the disingenuous nature of it,
Yeah.
they also have to, if council approves a budget increase, then that project becomes in budget. So I know that this has been brought up for the last 2 councils, is that they don't keep track of what the original budget was and how much higher it is on that. Like 50th Street widening, I remember that thing was 30 to 50 million or so when it was initially going to be like that 50th Street overpass there with the train. Yeah, it was supposed to be in the neighborhood of 30 to 50 million, and the administration was like, oh yeah, the railroad's going to cover most of that. It's not going to be a problem. Last I checked, I'm pretty sure it was 180 million, somewhere in there.
But because council approved the new budget, it is technically within budget.
Yep.
And not behind. Yeah, it's very disingenuous. So, and it's things like this that bother me a lot, because if we were honest, City Council is very aware that the average person isn't going to dig that deep into it.
Yeah.
They're just going to see, okay, is it on budget? Yeah, okay, cool, we're good. Or here, see the number, okay, 90% of all projects are on budget. Cool, ignoring the fact that that's a very disingenuous number. That's not accounting for dollar amounts. That's not accounting for the fact that council can move the goalpost.
Yep.
Like there's a lot of things they can do to fudge that number and make it look like they're doing their jobs, when in reality it's like, oh, well, less so.
And maybe it's not them, right? Because administration's the one who brings all these reports and whatnot.
That's fair.
There's a reasonable expectation that they ought to know. Whether they knew or not, they ought to know.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's an important distinction.
Yeah.
Tongue-tied today.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
But yeah, because I mean, like, it's hard to say you actually knew this, but it's more reasonable to say you ought to have known this.
Right.
Like, the fact that you didn't actually isn't doing you a favor, you know?
Yeah, and I don't want to put, and you're right, it's unfair of us to put all the blame on council themselves, but you're right. I do think it is reasonable for us to expect them to be aware of these things and to be upfront with us about what's going on, instead of just spending half their time trying to make it look better than it is.
Yep.
So that's kind of where we're at. So public consultation process is on now. I would encourage everyone to get involved.
I also would encourage everyone to get involved.
Yep. Make your opinions known. It might lead to nothing, but if we have that mindset going in, then we're just going to perpetuate this apathy. Now I'm getting tongue-tied, and that just is not good for our city. So get involved, make your opinion known, and let's make some real restraint in our capital expenditure budget. Let's hope there's some restraint in it going forward. When it comes out and when we have it, I'm sure we'll be doing a whole episode on just that. But yeah, so let's move on a bit from the capital expenditure budget. You had something before the show. You were talking a bit about the operating budget.
Yeah. So yeah, the council recently, they went through their presentations with the administration for detailed operating budgets, but they're not detailed.
Yeah.
They're like, look at, this is how much money we spent. They showed the amount of staff that each department has, which, you know, I appreciate that, but I also don't like that, because I think, now whether they intended this or not, I don't know. I'm not speaking to that, but what's actually going to happen is it's baiting opponents of this council to target frontline staff as the thing to cut, because that's the only thing that they know about, right? They don't know. When we look at external services, it's okay, how much is this is consultant? How much of this is you know, ad fees for, like, on social media for communications, for example? How much of this is you know, contracting out, like, our Ariba software? How much is just pencils, paper, and Post-its, you know? Like, they're not breaking this kind of stuff down, and so that's what's frustrating to me because I released a shadow budget during the campaign. I'm one guy, and I wasn't getting paid for it, and I had a more detailed budget than what was presented to council for these detailed budgets. So
Yeah.
it's pretty disappointing knowing that there's 2-3 dozen bureaucrats that are all in that $200,000-$300,000 a year range that are putting this out. Like if I were on council and saw that, right away I would have made a motion to terminate the city manager. This is unacceptable work. Fired with cause.
Yeah. So the operating budget for this coming year is this year is available online now, right?
Not yet. It's it's a kind of like a sample of it.
Oh, it's a sample one. Okay.
I think it might be the previous year, but like honestly, I read a little bit of it, and I was so frustrated with the lack of detail that I was like, you know what, I'm not even going to finish this. Like it's not. There's nothing to read.
Nothing to read. Yeah. And just reminder for those at home that they're interested in our operating budget and our capital expenditure budget. Every year we have an operating budget. Like so, it's the ongoing operations of the city. And a key distinction to that makes it very important is the city is not legally allowed to take debt out on it. We have to, anything that we spend in that budget, we have to be good for it. We can't take any debt out on it. And on one hand, that's a good thing, but on the other hand, if that gets ballooned too much, we have to find the money for it somewhere, usually in the form of your property taxes. So I'm sure we can rant about property taxes at some point too. But our capital expenditure budget, which we were just previously talking about, that one is we get a new one every 3-4 years. Yeah, 4 years is when we get a new one. And it is things like new roads, new bridges, new rec centers, filling potholes, which you can argue if potholes fall in the operating budget or not.
Potholes fall under operating.
Yeah, I know there's some maintenance. Some maintenance things fall under the capital expenditure budget, and others fall in the operating budget. You're starting to get pretty nuanced there, but in general, the capital expenditure budget is building new things.
Yeah,
building new things or replacing old things. That one is the one that I always like to focus on a lot because we can take debt out on that one.
Yeah. See, and now I'm torn on that. Like I like looking at the operating budget more because that's your recurring expenses, right? And one of the things that I had pointed out is that I believe there is about 9% of the property tax bill goes to grant funding to organizations that do not have to disclose how they spend the money. And I didn't suggest cutting them off. I suggested you disclose, and then and if you don't disclose, then you don't get any more.
Yeah.
Regardless of how bad those books look, just show us, right? We'll deal with that after. For now, it's just about transparency, right?
Yeah, so you're not talking about cutting things because these could be valuable programs.
Absolutely.
You just want to know where the money's going.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think that's a pretty reasonable ask.
I thought so too.
Well, you know, and to be fair, a lot of these reports that council or that we get access to, the average person isn't going to read them.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't have access to them.
You know, I don't believe the average council member reads these reports, let alone the average, citizen or resident of Edmonton.
But I think they are important to have so we can hold
Agreed.
people to account and so that we can have some transparency. Because if there is no paper trail, if you will, or show me the receipts, and I'm sure there's some memes out there for that. If there's none of that, then how do we hold people accountable? How do we know that our property taxes are being spent properly?
Yep.
Like, because they very well might be spent properly, but the fact that they're unwilling to be transparent about it, that it should be concerning.
Yeah, and that goes back to my earlier point about how they are being transparent about how much staff they have, which if that's the only thing that we have disclosure on, that automatically becomes the target. And so for opponents in the next election, they're going to focus on staff because those are the only numbers that we really have any level of detail on.
Yeah, so that's a bit of a rant about the budget, and I'm sure we will get some more details on the operating budget and the capital expenditure budget in the coming days, or coming weeks, months. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it's going to end up being due by the end of next month or the following.
So yeah, they have to finalize the budget that they passed in, was it December? They have to finalize that with the mill rates and everything for at the end of June. And then, but the actual, like the next 4-year budget cycle, both capital and operating, I believe that's going to come out in November. It might be October, but they have until December.
So we got some time before we actually will be able to see the numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's going to be a ways away still, but still very important dates to keep your eye on. Yeah, so let's move on to another topic, something that is near and dear to my heart that we kind of alluded to a bit, is infill and zoning in this city. So give us your thoughts of what's going on right now, or what have you heard lately with zoning bylaws and infill?
So ultimately, it's, people talk about their property values. And yes, I get the argument that you're adding more total assessment into it, but what you're doing is, if you look within 50-meter radius of an infill, those properties are going down in value. So it is increasing a little bit, but then there's all these extra expenses. Like they make this argument about how we need to densify because it's more financially efficient. Well, downtown spends more than any ward. Yeah, they pay more than any other neighborhood, but they spend considerably more than they actually bring in. And this was one of the things that I broke down in the last election. There was I showed ward by ward which ward pays the most in taxes, which ward spends the most in taxes, and I included the capital on some of that too. And
it's the densest wards that are spending the most.
Nakota Eastka was the biggest spend because of the rec center, because of the West Leg LRT. Like they just had some considerable projects, but yeah, so like, and like that was like half the capital budget. Like it was pretty bad.
It's pretty brutal. And I think there's, to be fair, I think normally I'm not a proponent of the way cities is going out about their infill or the zoning bylaw. But there is an argument to be made about how when we densify, we become more efficient as a city. Fair, and that exists. The numbers are there for that. However, how we do it matters.
Yeah.
How we do it matters a lot. And I feel the approach we've done is we've taken a one-size-fits-all approach. And by doing that, we're not addressing those nuances. We're not addressing the details. We are not looking at where's the best place to densify, where we could get the most property value for like the city's sake. Yeah. The number one thing that's driving this is, or where development's happening, is the return on investment for developers.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing driving where densification's happening in the city. Not where's closer to transit, not what's the most efficient, not what's going to give us the most bang for our taxpayer dollars. None of that. The highest return for developers, and I think there's something fundamentally wrong with that.
Yeah, I agree, and like you said, it's developers that are choosing it. Cities owns all the properties, but ultimately the developers are the ones that have to put up the money to actually build whatever's going to go there.
Right.
So like I get it that they are choosing, but at the same time they're also being incentivized away from single family, single detached housing. Like it's if you can build an 8-plex or a single detached house, like there's no financial incentive to build a single detached.
Well, and just that, like I remember, just speaking of those incentives, I remember time is one of them. And I can give a first-hand example. There was a house when I was door knocking on the campaign. It had burnt down in a fire. There was an electric bike that caught fire in the basement somewhere, like malfunction, legitimate insurance claim. Whole house was a write-off. All they wanted to do was rebuild the house exactly the way it was. Like, that's it. And insurance was like, okay, cool, that's what we're doing. The permits they needed to get just to do that took them almost a year.
Wow.
Right? Just that alone. And this is a single family detached house. And it was a nicer house, to be fair, but they're replacing something that's identical to what was there. That's all they wanted.
Yeah.
And what made me grossed out was across the street, there's an infill going up. 6-plex. How long do you think it took to get the permits?
Let's guess less than 90 days.
Yeah. Yep. So the house that caught fire. So it's a year. So the house catches fire, almost within the same month. Across the street, a developer buys a house that's kind of run down, need to replace. To be fair. The sixplex was almost complete by the time that the guys whose house burnt down was got the permits. If that's not an incentive alone for a developer, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and in that case, I don't see why the previous permits wouldn't still be good. Like the
great
permit
question.
Was to have that there. It burned down accidentally. Like
the city had changed zoning rules, so it made it more difficult to build houses like that.
Yep.
And there was no clause to say, okay, cool. Like, I understand rules change and we update our zoning. That's. But house burnt down, you want to replace the exact same thing. There was nothing to accommodate that. Yeah. So we are definitely being disincentivized to build single-family homes.
Yep. Well, plus there's the federal financing that comes along with this kind of developments. That, I get that that's just the federal government trying to incentivize at a very, very high level. They're not like boots on the ground and looking at lot by lot, but the incentivization is there for building rental properties even. So I'm actually looking forward to the next census that we get federally to see how many people are renting versus how many people are owning.
Ooh, that's a number
right?
I've never thought of. That's important to know.
If we're talking about housing stability, mortgages are more stable than rent every time.
Yeah.
Right? Like at worst, your payments are going to change, assuming you get on a fixed rate mortgage, right? Every 5 years, your mortgage is going to change, whereas your rent is subject to change every year. So it's much less stable.
Yeah. And just kind of speaking, sometimes we like to delve into federal things on this show, but that federal program is essentially what's enabling this. And I'm not blaming the federal government. I'll take my snipes at them when they deserve it. You're right. This is a very broad stroke thing that they've done, and they've made this available to every city in the country. Mm-hmm. To my knowledge, there aren't any other cities that are taking it to the extreme that we are. I can't think of it off the top of my head. If anyone out there in the comments wants to list a city,
I would say maybe Calgary, because I know Calgary revamped their zoning bylaw, but now they're coming back.
They're coming back from it.
So
they're coming back from the edge.
So yeah, that'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, because the federal program outlines like, okay, here's things we recommend. Here's how you can access this funding. Here's a bunch of different criteria. Pick and choose which ones best match your city best, because you know better. Yeah. And you know what? I kind of, in some ways, I like programs like that because it allows local government to make decisions, to access, and is not being dictated to on high by a federal government that might not understand, making one size fits all strict rules for everyone. On one hand, I like that, but on the other hand, it has it's allowed cities like Edmonton to kind of go off the deep end a little bit.
Yeah, well, and when we're talking about that, like cities being able to make their own decisions, like we are so close on our north and our east and our south borders to bumping up to other cities that it actually makes the most financial sense just to sprawl that little bit, hit those edges, and go up. But with that open space, because if we don't develop it, then they're going to develop it, and they're going to do single detached housing. At least this way, if we're putting in new development, we can put in new and tall. So that's what I would like to see. And then, throwing back to my one of the blogs that I had there about the wards that are paying the most. So what I found was that Ward Garihio was the biggest net contributor to the city's finances, and the biggest driver of that was Summerside, which is virtually all single detached housing. So there is a financial argument to be made for single detached housing.
When done right.
Yeah, exactly.
I really don't like the argument of making this a black and white thing, because there can be single detached housing that is inefficient. Mm-hmm. Fair. And that is, we can have a conversation there, but there's also single detached housing that is efficient.
Yep.
In terms, if you're looking at property taxes and maintenance of city, sure. The same argument can apply to infill housing. Mm-hmm. Like, not every eightplex is a net contributor to the city.
Yep. And not everyone is a net
negative
detractor. So.
Correct. So there's a lot of nuance there. to it, and I feel that nuance is being completely lost in the argument, and that's where my biggest concern is, that we're not having those nuanced conversations.
Yeah, and so that was actually why one of the things that I proposed was bringing in a new residential class. So we're going from 26 to 27, or rather than, we had 46. So if it's, you guys were one off, that's we still eliminated almost 20 of them. So it's still good progress. But I wanted to bring in a residential basic for single detached, semi-detached, and a secondary suite. Whether that's garden, garage, or basement, up to you. But it still densifies. It's actually gentle, not it's just gentle infill with this massive structures in your neighborhood that's going to throw all this strain on your electrical grid and your storm and sanitary sewers. And so that's what I propose. Because if you look at residential small, just as a zoning classification by itself, it's really not that bad. The problem is that everything is zoned for that. So it would be the same as if everything was zoned heavy industrial. It's very inappropriate for the neighborhoods. It doesn't mean that the actual zoning in isolation is bad. So when we're talking about should we change RS to be 6 units or 4 units? No, leave RS, keep it the residential small, keep it as it is, add residential basic with that single detached, semi-detached, and 1 secondary suite per unit. It effectively gives you a fourplex, have some sizing requirements, and so that was that's what I think needs to be done, is quit trying to amend residential small, add something smaller, automatically zone everything back unless it's gone through a public hearing process already that council is hands on.
And you know what, that makes almost too much sense. I think the problem we run into as city council is that however many years ago there was this city plan put forward, and I feel like the previous council and largely this current council, because most of them are the same, treats that city plan as gospel that cannot be disrupted. Yep. And I don't know if it's the council themselves or it's administration that gets their back up against the wall whenever the city plan is even questioned, or maybe it's a little bit of both there, but neither side seems willing to even question the city plan in any way, shape, or form. Which, if we're kind of coming up to when it matters, and we're not willing to make amendments to it or be like, hey, maybe we're off our rocker when we came up with this. Yep. So
well, and I see that often where council members will say, well, it was a previous council decision with the city plan, with the removal from of minimum parking requirements for
well, your councilor now, fix it.
Exactly.
Right?
That's like, spoiler alert, you can make a motion to make a change. Like, it's
yeah, the excuse of, well, that was the last guy seems to be the ultimate, like, get out jail free card. And I think people in general, at all levels of government, not just Edmonton, but I think people in Edmonton are pretty stinking sick of hearing that.
Yeah, and now, I want to be fair that there's a lot of things to fix. There's been probably no city council in Edmonton's history that has ever inherited a perfect system.
Unlikely.
And, all the, like, I don't think one council can make all of the necessary changes to correct
that's
the
a
ship.
very fair point.
So it's about picking your battles, right? So for me, city plan was a big one for me because the city plans typically last 10 years. Then they have to either renew it or replace it.
Yep.
So the next council is likely it's gonna have to be in that position. 2030 is when they're gonna vote on that new city plan. But we got to get the groundwork in early and have an alternative and say, look, do we want to continue down the same track of this city plan, or do we want a different direction? We need both of those options put forward.
Yeah, and that's a good point. The next election's in late 2029, so the city council of 2030 is the one that's going to be making that decision on, like, okay, we're at a crossroad when it comes to city plan.
Yep.
So that's going to be a pretty important election. Now, not to say they're not all important. I remember my big stick on the campaign was that we're nearing this. This election was the one we got to decide who's going to represent us when it comes to this capital expenditure budget. And you can tell how confident I am in that one right now. But in 2030, it's going to be the big decision for council is going to be this going forward with the city plan.
Yeah. Well, and I believe it was September 18th to 20th meeting, 2020, where they passed the city plan. So when we do the 2030, just because of the way that the election cycle lines up too, because the 4-year budget cycle is offset 1 year from elections. So we have the 2029 election, then the 2030 4-year budget. So they got to do
they're going to have both.
The city plan and
they're going to have them
both.
That's an overlap. So, oof. Yeah, that's going to be something for anyone who wants to campaign next time.
Whoever
hammer
wins
that pretty hard.
Yeah, so whoever wins in that next election is going to have a lot of work in front of them.
Yeah, dang. That's
yeah.
That good luck to them. Well, good luck to our current council, but still.
But the thing that drives me most crazy about the city plan, and assuming even if the rest of it was perfect, this one thing is enough for me to say, you know what? No. It's the economic numbers. They're talking. They put this on the 3rd page of the cover report as if it was something to be bragging about the job numbers. And I'm looking at those and I'm like, no, 1 million jobs for 2 million people is not enough. Like, you don't need to be an economist to figure that out.
That there's a.
But I did actually. I hired an economist to look at those numbers and tell me, like, okay, what does this actually mean in unemployment? Because clearly that's not 50% unemployment rate, because we got retirees, we got youth,
children.
So based on the historical labor participation rate of about, I think it was 6. For the blog that I did, we
60
did
somewhat, isn't it?
Yeah, high 60s to low 70s over the last 10 years or so. So we took the highest and we took the lowest. Best case scenario, we're looking at an 18% unemployment rate. Worst case, I think it was 26%.
That's insane.
And that's not just the trajectory. That is the plan.
Yeah, I was looking at unemployment numbers, like nationally. Have you seen the February numbers?
Not lately.
Oh, okay. So this one scared me. So we're kind of shifting gears a little bit.
Sure.
But federally, they were projecting, like the federal government had projected to add about 10,000 new jobs in the month of February. Okay, that's pretty respectable. We end up losing almost 100,000 in February in a single month.
Wow.
That is the single largest job loss nationwide since, like, outside of COVID in decades. And that's insane. And now the thing that scares me, and we're not talking about it a lot. Now, here in Alberta, we're not talking about it so much because we actually in Alberta saw a slight increase in jobs by a few thousand.
Okay.
So you can argue if that's good or not. We basically stayed neutral and we kept it from getting terrible. Everywhere else got it pretty bad. The thing that scares me is the federal government projected an increase of 10,000 based on whatever's going on, whatever they're doing. They have way better numbers than I do. So that was what their plan was. But they're off by a lot. So I'm like, okay, you need to look at something here. Something's not, what you're doing isn't working. Now, I'm not going to pretend that everything's under control of the federal government. I'm sure there is. There's a lot going on in the world right now. So I'm not going to throw all the blame for that at them. But when your projections are that far off, you have to do some reassessment. And I think that also applies municipally to Edmonton. When your projections are so far off, there's something you're doing wrong. You have to take a fundamental look. Yeah. Like in budgeting. Like I remember I help with, that's kind of part of what I do, and for a living is helping with budgeting. And if your budget is so far off, like if I was working with pick any business I was working with, and they were off by a margin of like nowhere near what the federal government was off by on a projection like that, that would do an immediate reassessment of how they're budgeting or how they're planning going forward. And I think that's fundamentally what you need to do. Like you need to take an honest look at yourself in the mirror. Heads are rolling. People aren't happy. When if I go to a CEO and say, hey, here's your budget numbers, and I'm the number guy. I'm not responsible for the budgets themselves. I give recommendations when they're making them, but it's on them most of the time. And it's like, okay, so what's with this big negative number? It's like, you guys tell me.
Yeah.
I think you need to be calling some people.
Yep.
It's a
See,
red
now-
flag.
Now that kind of scenario, right, where a business goes over, now we end up with the Michael Scott Paper Company aspect of going back and asking your customers for more money. Like,
Yeah.
Like we laughed at it when it happened in the office, but that is literally what the city's doing. They're oh, we can't afford everything. Oh, let's just go back to the public
That's
and
what they're
raise
doing with our property
taxes.
taxes. Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. They are they're budgeting for something. They're getting it wrong, being far over, and then they're like, oh well, I guess we'll just raise property taxes.
Yep.
We're not an endless piggy bank here.
Yep.
Like, and I was reading some, or speaking just random tangent on property taxes a little bit, just to maintain the current plan, we're going to see at least a 4% increase each year until the next election. That's assuming they're correct.
Yeah.
With their budgeting. That's a big assumption.
And I mean, we all know too, right? They campaigned on a 6.8% tax increase and then ended up coming back at 6.9 after the election. Like it's trivial, but
Very trivial.
it's like, really, like you couldn't tell this 2 months ago.
Yeah, and there's also metrics they mess with. I'm sure everyone sees the property assessment goes up too. Like that's not technically increasing the percentage, but they're changing how much the city values your property for whichever reason. And infill being one of them, the city will. Here's a fun fact about infill: the city will actually value your property higher, like on your property tax assessment, because there's an infill near it, despite the fact an infill being within 50 meters. What was it, like 50 meters?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Within 50 meters of your house, actually, it practically decreases your value. The city sees that as an increase.
Yep.
Figure that one out for me.
So yeah, that's so with property taxes, they increase your assessment value, and yes, you might be responsible for more taxes. But if everybody's inflates the same, like at the same rate, then everybody pays the same thing. Now, where we get into it being disproportionate is when one class of zoning goes up higher than other classes of zoning. So in this example, we're talking about single detached or RS zoned houses. Well, actually, single detached. Because a developer wants them to tear them down to put up an 8-plex, developers are often willing to overpay for these properties and bump that assessment. So now single detached homes are being disproportionately increased to the rest of the city, and it's shifting more of that tax burden to single detached homeowners. All right, so yeah, it like the budget is zero sum based on the assessment. So the city is not. I don't believe anyways that the city is increasing people's assessment value to be able to charge them more taxes.
Doing it maliciously.
Yeah, because they decide it's not any better, but basically the city decides how much they want to spend first, then they figure out how it's going to be paid for based on the assessment value of everybody. So
that's a good way of putting it, because that's exactly how it works.
Exactly.
Figure out how much it wants.
It's not much better, but
it's okay. Maybe not intentionally malicious, but maybe a little not ideal.
Yeah, like but at the same time, municipal government doesn't have as many mechanisms as other orders of government to raise money. So,
and that is a point I will cede to city council. Like when you look at other orders of government, like the province or the federal government, they have ways of taxation. Like sales taxes or other different
deficit spending.
They have different mechanisms. Whereas our city, and this is one point I will adamantly defend any city council, because it's true no matter who's in council. Their only mechanism of raising money is your property taxes and taking debt on the capital expenditure budget. That's it.
For the most part, yeah. Now
there's some nuance in terms of like interest rate or like interest they collect from investments.
And we're fortunate that we get
so minor
the dividend from EPCOR. A council of the past has set up the EPCOR, the Until Endowment Fund, which provides dividends as well, right?
Yeah, so, I have rants about that, but yes, conceptually that those things exist, but those things make up a very small percentage of the revenue we bring in.
Yeah, it's property taxes is
is
our breadwinner.
It's the breadwinner with and that's the only mechanism that realistically that council has So now, that's also not me defending their constant property tax increases, because you're right. They're deciding how much they want to spend and then coming back to us.
Exactly right, and it's credit or criticism where it's due.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? It's fair.
Yeah.
For better or for worse, you deserve to be recognized for the job that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will definitely recognize that this council, or any council that's ever existed, they only have those limited options.
Yes.
Now, how they work within those options, then I'm gonna get some more critical.
Exactly.
But you are absolutely right. They only do have the property taxes is basically it.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that's yeah. Was there? I think that kind of brings us to everything I want to chat about tonight. Was there anything else anything that's close and dear to your heart, Jason? And
yeah, I mean, we talked the budget, we talked zoning, we talked public engagement. Like we really hit a bunch of them. So, but you know what? I'm sure that there is something that I want to talk about, but it's waiting for me in my car. So
you know what? We'll have you back on the show some other time.
Yeah, sounds good.
Well, thanks so much for coming, Jason. It's always a pleasure, and looking forward to next time.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me, Mark.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.
Principled Accountable Coalition for Edmonton. This is your PACE podcast. Subscribe today. Get any good stuff there, Steve?